And joining us now, she's one of the all-time greats, arguably the greatest to ever wear an East Carolina Pirate jersey, three-time USA Pitcher of the Year, two-time Conference USA champion, and All-American, the all-time wins leader in Conference USA and at ECU, 118 wins, and now Hall of Famer, East Carolina Hall of Famer, Toni Paisley. Honored to be joining us here at In the Circle. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Great. I am so excited to have you on because, as I told you a little bit before we started, I broadcast at UCF softball is where I got my start, 2007, and that was kind of in the era where you were pitching with Kelly Harrell at ECU,
Yes.
and then Allison Kime at UCF, and then Angel Shamblin at Houston, which just kind of got me sucked into softball. So that's kind of how
Those were monsters.
Yeah, and so we'll definitely get into that as well. But I want to ask you first, you just got inducted into the ECU Hall of Fame. Take us through that process when you found out, your reaction, and how it went.
Yeah, that was amazing. So a few months before I found out, I got an email from Greg Pierce, really awesome guy out there. And he said he was nominating me. So I read the email and I was super excited. And then, of course, a few months go by and I didn't hear anything. So you get so busy with work and lessons. And I was like out of sight, out of mind. So when I actually got the text and phone call from the athletic advisor, I'm thinking Terry Hollins. What's that role called?
Oh, the athletic director.
There you go. Gosh,
yeah,
I'm having like brain farts. But the athletic director, he was new and I had never spoke to him. So I got a message from him. He called me, John Gilbert. He congratulated me. And it was all a shock because I was like, oh, I totally forgot. This was a couple months ago when I was first told I was being nominated. And then I figured maybe it would be a year from now or something. So that was super exciting. The phone call was great. I had like this 10-second moment of pure excitement. And then after the 10 seconds, I thought, oh my gosh, I have to make a speech now. And I get so nervous and I was like, oh, now I'm stressed. But it was a really cool, crazy moment.
What was it like to be back on campus? I saw some photos you posted there. You got to be at the Boneyard, as I like to call it. I've been to that football stadium. You got to be, I believe, at one of the suites up there. I think you also obviously got honored at halftime or during the game at the football game, right?
That was really cool. Definitely felt like when I even got off the plane, I was like, oh, wow, I feel like I'm in college again for a second. I was like, this is cool. This is where I lived for pretty much 5 years. I only came back to California in the summer and just short vacations. So it was definitely a home for me, especially the competitive memories and just being an athlete on campus. That was a very cool moment getting to share that with everybody. Oh, that's mine, huh?
That is, yeah. You're
busy.
I
don't know how these computers work.
What was the last time you've been on the ECU campus? Because you just mentioned, for those that don't know, you reside in California. You're back in California. So when was the last time you were on campus?
Yes, last time, oh my gosh, was probably when I graduated, 2011.
Wow.
But then I went back. Oh, look, I don't know how to turn these off. I went back in 2012 maybe to visit one of my best friends on the team, Suzanne Riggs. And then I don't think we went on campus though. So really 2011 was the last time.
That's amazing. What'd you think? What was it? What did you feel like when you stepped on campus then? That'd be did it take you aback a little bit? What was that like?
Oh yeah. I felt like I was 21 again. I was like, somebody throw me a jersey. I kept telling people like, hey, can you give me an extra year of eligibility? And then I was quickly reminded, yeah, I think my playing days are a little bit slower now.
Did you see some familiar faces? Who was in the Hall of Fame ceremony there that you may have, you knew? I know a lot of things have changed. Obviously, they even have a new staff at ECU and things like that. But still, I'm sure there were some familiar faces you saw.
Yeah, Ruffin McNeil. I mean, that was the most popular, the most common face that I recognized. He was actually coaching when I was there. So that was super cool.
That is incredible. How did you end up at ECU, deciding to play there? Because you were from California, right?
Yeah.
So how did a California girl end up in Greenville?
So I played on my junior year of high school. I got on a new travel ball team in California that was actually a real small travel ball team, not crazy known. We just wanted to have fun. And a lot of us on that team ended up being very competitive. but they were called the Desperados. And at the Colorado Showcase, which is still going on now, ECU was there because they were watching one of my teammates, Vanessa. So she was already going there, and that's how they started following us, and they stumbled across me. Then, of course, they gave me an offer. I went on a visit. I went on a couple visits, and they just really stood out to me. So that's how I ended up completely across the coast.
How was that adjustment going from being a California girl? I mean, did you have, I'm assuming you had some homesickness at first, right? Like, what was that
Yeah.
transition like?
I think when you first show up on campus, especially as a freshman, you are so busy and you are just trying to get used to being a student athlete in college now that you don't have time, at least for the few first months maybe you don't have time to really think about missing home because you're so busy. But I'll tell you, when I came home for Thanksgiving break and then Christmas break, when I went back to ECU, I got a little homesick because you go home for a couple weeks, you have a feeling of, everything you were used to and where you grew up. So then when I flew back out, I was like having a couple moments, a couple nights, oh, I'm a little homesick. But then you get busy again, and then you have a great support system. You have other teammates that are having the same feelings, and then it all magically disappears.
How did you get into playing softball? What got you interested in being a pitcher yourself growing up?
Yeah, I think when I was maybe 6, I started with T-ball. I did baseball for a season. I guess the story is I didn't want to go out on the field. I was so nervous and shy, which is kind of like my son now. It's funny. My mom said she had to almost drag me out to the field for the first practice. Once I got out there, I had a blast. Baseball turned into softball, and I didn't pitch until about 9 or 10 years old. I was on a little rec ball team, and I was usually just playing shortstop or right field. And I noticed the pitching position looked very fun, entertaining, center of attention type stuff. Like you get the ball every time. So the pitcher on the team, she actually told myself and my parents she would help me pitch after practice if I wanted to learn. So I think for her, only being 10 years old was a really cool experience to try to help another 9 or 10-year-old. And then after that, I just caught fire and I never wanted to stop.
Now, you didn't stop, but your first year was 2007. And I remember because I covered some of your games when you all were in the conference tournament. The Conference USA tournament at the time was at UCF. It was a double elimination format. That was my first year broadcasting softball. I was a student. I was feeling, I jumped in halfway through the season. Didn't know as much about softball, but I got hooked pretty quick. UCF had a pitcher named Allison Kime who you competed against for multiple couple years. And one in particular was that semifinal game. It was a winner take all to the winner goes to the championship game.
Yes.
And you go 12 innings. Who and her go 12 innings. Jessica Johnson hits the homer. ECU wins. You would go on and lose to Houston later that day. Angel Shamblin and the Cougars won the tournament against Kelly Harrell. But describe your first year, because you had a great pitcher that you can learn from Kelly Harrell. How much did that help you?
I did. That helped me a lot because coming in as a freshman, I really had no clue. I'm sure a lot of freshmen feel like this. I had no idea what it actually meant to compete on the Division I level. Doesn't matter, if you're mid-level, the top level, you go D1, a lot of times you just have no idea what you're up against. So going in my freshman year, having a senior pitcher who was very decorated too, with awards and everything, phenomenal pitcher, great spin on the ball. That gave me some cushion where I knew if I was messing up, I had someone always that had my back. So that was really, really cool. And I think what also, if we fast forward a few years, she came back as like a graduate assistant and she got to help me even more when I was older. I'm trying to remember if that was my junior year, maybe, but that was really, really cool too, having her as a freshman, actually as a teammate, and then on the coaching staff. So that was neat.
It's funny. I remember that because you were kind of under the radar in 07. I remember being in the press box because Kelly got a lot of the attention. But you got that big game pitch against UCF, you and Kime, with 12 innings. What was it like to be involved in a matchup like that? Because a year later, you would go against her again and pitch in a 15-inning game.
Yeah.
So you two just like to go forever.
Us at that university, I feel like we always had those games. And the really crazy thing is they always had a great team. And no matter what, it was always going to be a pitcher's duel against UCF. Pitcher's duel, like hands down, you could probably put money on it. This was what was going to happen. So going into those games, I always had the mindset of, hey, this is going to be a close game. But it's so interesting looking back. I always felt super confident in those games. I don't know what it was. Maybe the jerseys, something. I always felt confident against those hitters. So even going, past 7 innings, I really just kept looking at my teammates. You give me one run, one run and we've got this.
And you did. You won that against Keim. And then, in 08, you come back, you play a regular season series. I mentioned you and her go in a 15-inning game. It's one of the longest, I think it's one of the longest games in the history still of both your careers. What's it like pitching in a game like that? 15 innings. You know her. She's going to match you pitch for pitch. She was a two-way player. She's now in the UCF Hall of Fame, by the way. So it'd be 2 future Hall of Famers.
Oh, that's really cool. Yeah.
She got inducted in 2019 at UCF. What was it like going in a 15-inning battle with her?
That, it's exhausting after the game. During the game, you're just so into it and everything is so intense. You're not thinking about that. You're literally just thinking about each pitch. So, of course, it's super long and you're exhausted after, but when you're there, your mind is just grinding the entire time.
So that weekend, you win that 15-inning game. You win the second game. Back then, they played double headers and then the single game Sunday. You pitched in, I think, all 3 games in some capacity. And you had a lead on Sunday. I'll never forget this. And you left the game abruptly. And back then, it was all secretive. Nobody knew anything was going on.
Yeah.
That would turn out to be the last any game you would pitch that year. I didn't find out until later in the year, until the conference tournament, that you actually got hurt.
Yeah.
What happened?
So pretty much in that game and in that moment, I remember, I think, like you said, we were ahead. I was doing fine. It probably looked fine from an outside view, but I was pretty much literally shredding my elbow. Every pitch I was throwing, I was hitting my hip. The inflammation was getting worse, the stress fracture in my forearm. Again, you couldn't tell from the outside because I was just throwing, and it's, survival mode. You throw each pitch, you have a job to do, but it was probably the peak of my pain. I'm throwing those pitches because I was never really one to pull myself out of a game.
Wow. See, so what happened? You ended up having surgery. Like, what was that like? Yeah. What was that like now? Because you're out for the rest of the year. You got to, you probably are watching your team the rest of the year. They made the tournament that year, but they went through, obviously you didn't, achieve the expectations you all had probably going in, because you're probably thinking we can win the league, compete with Houston and UCF. And now all of a sudden you took a step back. What was that like sitting on the sidelines? And now, are you having doubts whether you're coming back?
Yeah, that was pretty awful. Not a lot of mental highs at first. It was literally just low, low, and lower. First, figuring out what the heck was going on. We knew it was from my mechanics. I was hitting my hip, a little bit of overuse over Christmas break. It kind of, had everything fall. So then I have to go through, the future thoughts. Am I going to be able to pitch again? Am I ever going to not hit my hip? So those were the beginning stages of the lows. Then the next lows come, where you're watching your teammates and you can't do anything. You hear all these stories of, I can cheer for them now, I can support them. And yes, that's absolutely true. But in the beginning, you're watching them compete without you, and all you want to do is play. You're used to helping your team, and you're literally just watching. So that was the low of the lows. And then we found out on an MRI that it was just partially tearing. So we caught it at the perfect moment, not knowing if I would be able to throw again. But we still decided that 6 months to 8 months, no pitching, and just strictly rehab. All I did was rehab. I never threw overhand, never threw underhand. I just strengthened everything, let it heal. And that following fall, I remember my first bullpen. Of course, it wasn't a full bullpen. It was literally probably 10 pitches, and they were just like slow, long toss pitches. And I remember hitting my hip again. And those were the months where, I was having those shower cries. I'm crying in the car, like I'm never going to be able to pitch again. Just very, very low feelings. But I just continued to persevere, and I kept thinking, let's watch the videos. Let's see what I'm doing. There wasn't a lot of biomechanics information back then. So it was really just get out there, feel what you're doing, try to watch the video, try to adjust. And we did. So ever since that, I was able to throw again. I never injured my elbow again. I had some bruises on and off, but after that, it was definitely the greatest feeling being able to throw again.
Yeah, you came back in 2009. You would go on to win Conference USA Pitcher of the Year. It'll be the first of 3 straight, matching Angel Shamblin of Houston, who won 3 straight herself. She just got inducted, by the way.
She's awesome.
She got inducted to the Houston Athletics Hall of Fame here about a month or two ago. I don't know if you.
I saw that. Yeah, we're still friends on Facebook.
First of all, what was it like? Because you got to see Angel up close for those 2 years. What was it like competing against her? And think about this. Think of all the Hall of Famers you guys were around, and we're not even talking about like a Rachel Folden, who was the best hitter in the league at the now and the thing she's doing. What was that like being that? That'd be a special time.
Yeah, I feel like Conference USA was really like a hidden gem. We had quite a few players that really broke some records and did some amazing things. And like you're saying, the Hall of Fame, we had some great athletes. Being able to watch her on the mound was really, really a great role model. I remember watching her. She was very poised, a great attitude. And I feel like she had a really good arsenal of weapons on the mound with different pitches and just variability. So she was a great role model. And seeing her taking awards, I was like, wow, what a leader, what a workhorse on the mound. And it was definitely something that inspired me to continue to work hard.
Was there a turning point in 2009 or at some point where you were throwing, you felt like, yeah, I'm back, I can do this? Because I'm sure there was doubts when you were coming back.
Yeah, definitely. Usually mid-season, that's when I start to really, really heat up and start to feel good. So I knew at that moment, not a specific game. I just remember multiple games, being able to put a few in a row where I'm having no injury issues. I've got my command back and my spin and my power. That's when I knew.
You go on to win 3 straight USA Pitcher of the Year awards, as I mentioned. You would go on to win 2 straight Conference USA championships as a team. I was there. Here we go again. 2010, you beat UCF in the CUSA championship game. That had I think a 7-hour rain delay in Houston, and you won 3-1. And the only run you gave up was a kind of a goofy play where Natalie Land, who she just got inducted to the UCF Hall of Fame, by the way.
That's so good. Hey, she was a beast too.
You faced a lot of Hall of Famers. I don't know if you've noticed that.
Triple threat. I'm telling you, if there was anybody, not even like home run hitters, it was her because she was a triple threat. I almost hated throwing to her. It was a ton of fun, but oh my gosh, she was the one I always had to just focus really, really well.
See what you mean? She stole home
to
score the first run in that first inning because there was a miscommunication between you and the catcher, I think.
I think our catcher at the time, I think she thought it was 3 outs or it was the 3rd strike or something, and she threw the ball up.
Yes.
And then I remember everybody was like, it was just chaos. Like, what is happening? Thank goodness we came back and settled down. But I remember that, especially after that rain delay, which who knows, probably had something to do with it. Both teams were probably a little bit mentally exhausted already, just sitting, in the dugouts and in the locker rooms, warming up and then getting cool, warming up again. That was a long day.
It really was, but you won 3-1. What was it like to win that championship and that trophy, that deal?
That was our big one because I believe that was the first one in a very long time. Mm-hmm. I don't remember when they had their last one, but that was huge. That was huge for not only the players, but the staff and the ECU as an entire program. That was a really, really big statement. So that moment is something I definitely don't forget. The one we won the year after felt really good too, but it didn't compare to that one year before because that was, the big statement one.
Right, because you've been knocking on the door, but there was always Houston in the way or UCF in the way.
Yeah.
And ironically, I think you went through both of them in that conference tournament. The tournament was held in Houston where Shamblin obviously pitched. So that was tremendous. And then you went to the regionals in Austin and got to the regional final against BYU because y'all knocked out Texas. And we had Gordon Eakin on, the BYU head coach, and he said, you gave him a lot of fits. It took him a while to adjust. What was it like to be in the NCAA tournament? Because you didn't get that opportunity in 08.
Yeah, that was huge. That was so much fun. Again, even though it was later in my career, and even though I got to watch one, like you said, I didn't get to participate. So I really didn't understand even what that felt like. You see your other players compete, and you know the vibe and the presence, but actually being on the field and how crucial every pitch is, every inning, that was really cool. And I want to say shutting out Texas, what was that, a 1-0 game?
Yep.
Marina had the big home run. That was probably one of the highlights of my career, that game. That was so much fun.
It was incredible. You mentioned 2011. You were kind of on the bubble for the tournament, going into that conference tournament. You're hosting at the brand at that time. Now that was I think the first year of the new stadium, which is now 10 years old.
Yeah.
And again, I was there in person. You notice you've had good, for the most part, outside of the injury, you've had good luck when I've been around. So
Yeah.
I should have been invited to your Hall of Fame, but I'm just kidding.
Yeah, right. I know. I did a terrible job on inviting people. I invited two of my teammates, and I was like, "All right, let's just go do this."
Right. But I remember that was the home tournament. There was pressure because you're the host, and were you all aware that you needed to either win the tournament or come close to make the tournament? And for you knew this was going to be your last home game, no matter what.
Yes, we were aware that we needed to win. ECU was a program where we kind of always felt like we needed to win. Like you said, we were on the bubble all the time, and we really never got any favors thrown towards us. So we always knew we had to win, and we didn't want to leave it up to anybody else. Now, going into that, we also knew we had to win because we didn't place that well, I believe, that year.
Yeah, you were fourth or fifth in the league. Yeah.
Yeah. So we knew this was it, go big or go home. So going into that tournament and having a ton of freshmen, I think the class was, it could have been 8 or 9 of them, right, on the team.
Yeah.
So being able to lead them through conference tournament and get them a championship, that was really cool because I knew it would help them with the rest of their careers.
It's funny. You told me you were like shy, but I remember at least during that time period, you were pretty, you showed your emotion when you were pitching. You were very charismatic. What was that like? Because I remember being in that booth, Chip Welch, who you know very well, still works there at ECU. Yes. Sarah Fetters at the time used to work there. I know her very well. They were all very nervous. They were all tense because you're hosting, so you have a lot of obligations, but they knew what was at stake. What was that like when you got that last out? You beat a good Tulsa team. I want to say that was the Amy Kreger Tulsa team, I want to say. Coach Barfeld and company. And that place went nuts.
Yeah, that was fun. That was a feeling.
What was it like? Because that was your last pitch at home. Not many could say their last pitch at home, they won a championship in their last home game.
Yeah, when you have a moment like that, the good thing is you don't go straight to the tears, because first you're super excited, right? You're really into it. You're pumped. Your fans, everybody is just so loud and proud. So I didn't have to cry right away. That was awesome. And I'm like, okay, we live another day. I get to throw another game. We get to play another game as a team. Now, I want to say the best part about that celebration was when Suzanne Riggs was sprinting towards me and I was going towards her. I jumped on her and we completely lost our balance and she took me down. So we have that video to this day. It's so funny. I'm going to have to find it again. But I believe one of the commentators said she was trophy bounding or bounding, something happened. It was so funny. And I just toppled over and we thought it was the best thing ever.
Y'all got sent to College Park for a regional, end up playing Baylor. I want to say that was the Whitney Canyon Baylor team.
Yes,
Megan Turk was on that team. Lost.
Baylor went on to beat Georgia.
Yeah. In the Supers.
Yep. Yeah. That was a good Baylor team.
What was that like? Because that would be how your career ended, a 1-0 loss to Baylor. I know it had to be painful at the time, but still, to be to 2 regional finals, taking that program. I mean, looking back 10 years ago, that was 10 years ago. I mean, that's what do you think of when you think back of your playing career and those moments in particular?
Yeah, that was a really fun moment because I felt like competing against such a great top-ranked program that we really were able to show them who we were. I know for a fact they were probably nervous. The first game, I remember one game was 2-1 and one was 1-0.
Yep.
So the first game against Baylor, they didn't score for quite a while. So I feel like they knew we were going to be tough to beat in the championship. Sure, we had to beat them twice if we wanted to move on, but I knew they were a little bit nervous, and we just gave it our all because we were, the underdog.
Your career ends with 1,290 strikeouts, which is the career record at school there. 57 shutouts, 118 wins, 3 times USA Pitcher of the Year. You were also the Freshman of the Year in '07. All-time record holder in CUSA in strikeouts when you ended up being the 10th pick in the NPF draft for the Akron Racers, where you would end up playing pro. What was it? Describe your experience playing professionally.
Yeah, my experience was probably different. I don't know if it was different than the majority of the players, but I mean, I'm leaning towards it might have been different. I didn't even know there was an NPF, and I didn't even know what a draft was at that time. So I think that took some of the just the celebration out of it, maybe, and understanding what the NPF was. I found out from a text message from my coach that, hey, congrats, you're going to Akron. And I remember being in the hotel room. I think we were playing Marshall that weekend. And I remember looking at who was in the room with me, and I was like, what's that? Like, what is this? I was mentally preparing to go home at the time. So it was really mixed, odd feelings. Looking back and being able to be a part of that, I was like, wow, that's an honor. That's something that I don't even know if 1% of athletes get to do for softball. It's a big honor being a professional, especially in the United States.
How long did you end up playing?
I only played that first season.
That 1 year.
I came home and I said, let's figure out what you want to do. Do you want to use your degree? Do you want to coach? And obviously I went the coaching route.
So yeah, take me through that process. You're done with your playing. And kind of what goes through your mind, what you end up doing, because eventually Paisley's pitching would become reality a few years later. So take us through that process that led you to Paisley's pitching.
Yeah, I came home, had some time at home with my parents where I'm just thinking, what am I going to do? So of course they knew, playing softball for so many years, they gave me some time to think about what I wanted to do. So I remember my neighbor in Lakewood, California. That's where I grew up, real close to Long Beach. My neighbor was playing rec ball at Hartwell, Long Beach Fast Pitch, and that's where I grew up playing. And she was only like 7 or 8 years old. And her dad said, hey, why don't you help us coach the team? And I thought, I think I'm afraid to coach kids. That was literally like my first feeling. I don't know if I can coach 8-year-olds. You go on so long and you get to like the highest level. And I was like, whoa, how do I go back down to the beginning stages? So looking at how I was super afraid at first, it's pretty funny how it turned out. And I love coaching kids now and all this stuff. So I coached their team for a season. And then a couple of the pitchers on that team, I started giving lessons to in the backyard that I grew up pitching at. And then over the weeks and months, one pitcher, word of mouth led to 10 led to 20, and then it just blew up. And I had a waiting list within the first year of over 100 names. So that's how Paisley's pitching started, with me being afraid to coach kids to me now loving it and just having so much fun.
Well, and you have done a great job. You and Amanda Scarborough, I think, have done a great job of using social media in that it's not just in person, but you can do things online as well. Because I've seen you do a lot of videos. We'll get into it. You do Instagram videos. You have a site. YouTube. You kind of have really grabbed all the advantages of technology here to help you grow this.
Yeah. Technology. I started my Facebook page in, I believe, 2011, 12, something at the very beginning. I started that one. I started the Instagram, I thought a couple years later, maybe a little before. I can check on that date. But I started both those pages and I thought, hey, let's just show everybody what we're doing at lessons. There wasn't much on social media. I don't remember seeing, a lot of softball instructors. And I just thought, well, this will be cool. We'll just share what we're doing, not even thinking about any opportunity for online training. I was literally probably just thinking, let's just show what we're doing. Maybe I'll get some more in-person lessons. It's free advertisement. And after that, getting closer to 2017, my following was growing. It was pretty cool. In 2017, I was getting so many messages from people out of state that were asking for my help. And so, sure, I could send them a message and be like, hey, work on these things. But I kept thinking there's a need and there's a demand. People are craving good instruction and just, lesson plans. How do we work out? So I thought, how cool would it be to make an online academy? Now, at that time, I didn't find not one single softball instructor doing an online academy. I had nothing to use as an example. It was literally just kind of my entrepreneurship mind thinking there's a need. Let's try to solve this problem for people. And I remember back then, I always use this Beachbody on Demand. I don't know if you recognize that
Yeah.
that fitness brand. They were hosting videos online and I was using them. I was training, with Beachbody on Demand. I used to do that in college too. And I feel like that's how I got so in shape. So I actually used that idea of, wow, they're training fitness people online. Why can't I do this with softball? So I YouTubed everything. I didn't hire anybody. I just kept YouTubing how to make a website, how to do this. I ended up finding a website host and I just, copy and pasted the tools and the widgets, and I created the online academy, which ended up blowing up after the first year. It was pretty awesome to see the growth there, starting from nothing and just developing something that now other coaches can model off of.
What's the most common question you get from players that you give lessons to? What's the most common question you get?
How do I gain speed? that's never going away. How do I gain speed? How do I throw harder? That one cracks me up every time. I smile, I laugh because it's literally the number one question.
That's funny. I'm curious because you broke down your injury earlier, the injury you suffered in '08 and what caused the injury. I wonder if you didn't know it at the time, but maybe now looking back on it, was that maybe the beginning of Paisley's pitching? Because you had to learn mechanics, right, to make sure you stayed healthy. I feel like in some ways maybe that was a blessing in disguise because without that injury, you wouldn't know maybe go into Paisley's pitching and learn as much about the mechanics.
I say that often. I think I was just talking to one of my online lessons the other day. She made a really cool post on Instagram. She's injured, she's in a boot, and she was working on her spins. And it literally brought me back to when I was injured, how now I had to relearn my motion. I had to, do all the video analysis that we didn't have much data on. I had to work on only the things that I was able to work on. So that moment, you're probably absolutely right, defined Paisley's pitching, not even knowing that it would be a thing in the future. But it gave me the grit, really bearing down when you have a problem and being able to push through it and learn so much about your motion.
How much do you give advice do you give players? You've developed a lot of pitchers that have gone on to play at all different levels in Division I and other divisions in college softball. Obviously, you've been through everything they've been through. How much of that is part of Paisley's pitching too, where you give guidance to them if they need that advice and help in figuring things out, either what school to go or how is life in college, things like that?
Yeah, I think from the outside view, people think Paisley's pitching might be all about like mechanics and getting powerful and strong and working on your spins. But if I go back to 2017 when I made the program, not the in-person training, because I'll talk about that too, but the online training, one of the first things I did was develop an 11-chapter mental program. And I was like, this was at the heart of my program, even though people don't see that all the time, the mental stuff, the guidance, just talking about not only being a player and a leader, but being a human being, that's very important to help these athletes develop with that. So in person, the guidance part is actually extremely cool because really with your lessons, you're creating a relationship and you don't have to dedicate lessons to, hey, we're going to work on mental training today. That happens every time, whether they come to their lessons and they're talking about problems at school, problems with relationships, balancing work and life, family, home. Those are things we get to talk about because we've created such a good relationship where the guidance just happens naturally.
You obviously follow the game because you have a lot of players, your vested interest. Obviously, you want to see them do well. I mean, I think we were talking, I think you have probably 30, 40 players have gone on to play college softball
Yeah.
in there. What do you think about the game now? Because there's more and more pitching by committee. You were one that carried the ball back in your, that time. You, Shamblin, Kime, all those pitchers in that time.
Yeah.
You got the ball and it was yours. It might have been 2 games you might have had to pitch a day. Who knows? The game's a little different now. There's more by committee. Do you like it? Do you not like it? How does that, what's your thoughts on the game today and how pitchers are being used?
It's something that I think about often. I try to put myself back into my playing days, and I think, what if I had a staff like they do now? Because it's incredible. You'll see a big school with literally 6 pitchers that could go on and play and be the #1 workhouse at any university, right? Or workhorse. They could be the top pitcher at a ton of universities. So I was always the player where the more I pitched, the better I got. And if I was the workhorse and I was getting more innings, I always played better. So that's something that I don't know how I would perform. I'd like to believe I'm super competitive by nature. So no matter what, I would work hard and persevere. But it's interesting nowadays, seeing the competitive factor be a little bit different. They collaborate with each other, which is awesome. So there's lots of benefits. You get to see these players really shut down teams a lot more than maybe we could have in the past now because they have such dominant pitching staffs. It's a big change in the game.
How many times do players even bring up your playing career? Because I obviously one of the people you obviously coached and developed and gave lessons to is Brianna Vasquez, who I knew because she was her time at UCF. She's now at Iowa.
Yes.
But I remember her freshman year, we were at the UCF softball complex and I interviewed her in a post game. And afterwards, I'm like, you do realize, like, Toni pitched here. She's like, she did? Like this thing. Like, she knew you went to ECU, but I don't think she was aware that you actually pitched on that stadium. How much does that get brought up, your playing career? Do they ask? Do you bring that up as far as some of your experiences?
Yeah, I feel like we don't talk about it a lot. I used to laugh. Some of my players would sometimes be like, you were professional? And I would just laugh. Like, I'm not one to talk much about my career unless it's something like this and we start diving in and we talk about it. I've had people, they're like, why don't you brag about it more and stuff like that? And I try to talk about it on social media, but it's just been something I've never really, brought to the table unless someone's asking me a question. So my pitchers in person, they probably don't know much unless they start digging.
That's wild to me. That's
yeah, I know. I keep it on the low.
I do remember Bree posting a photo when they went to ECU though. So I remember that she kind of gave you a tribute there.
Yeah.
If Paisley's pitching existed 10 years ago, how would a young Toni Paisley work in a Paisley's pitching? How would you give lessons to a young Toni Paisley? What things would you give to that young Toni Paisley?
Oh man, with Toni Paisley, gosh. Okay, so I have heard from other coaches and pitching coaches that I used to go to that I was a very, very hard worker. So if I was coaching a young Toni, that would be something that I would feel very blessed to have. My students that work really hard, those are the ones, that you just love to have around you because they're going to succeed. Not even talking about pitching and records and stuff like that. They're just going to be that good human being because they work really hard. So if there was a program like Paisley's Pitching and I was a young kid in it, I think it would have been a really, really great time just to see me take those tools and apply them.
What's the one thing you wish you would have known 10, 12 years ago that you learned since, either through, as being now teaching the game, coaching the game, that you wish you would have, like, man, I wish I would have known that like 12 years ago?
Yeah, there's probably like mechanics things and just biomechanics that I wish I would have known, different ways to treat your body nicer. That would have been really, really great. On the mental side, I really, really wish I would have understood that you don't get to play forever. That's something people tell you all the time, even when we were in college, enjoy this last game, enjoy this season, play every pitch, like it's your last one. But it never feels like it's your last one until it really is. So that's something that I don't think we can change that. That's human nature, but that's something more on the mental side.
You're a mom, which you're balancing that with this. What is that like? Because I know you've talked about this in the past where at times you give lessons to two players at the same time. I've seen videos of it actually
Yeah.
where you're giving lessons to two players at a time. And part of that is because you're balancing your, being a mom responsibilities to obviously being, giving lessons. Talk about that balancing act.
Yeah, I had to balance quite a few things, which of course I can attribute to being a student athlete. You learn how to balance, right? That's one of the best gifts that you get going to college, and being a student athlete. But balancing now, I had to figure out how to make time for being a mom, how to not, cut half my lessons because I didn't have time. So that's when the group lessons started training. And then even with the online, and then being a mom that's trying to make a business and a salary, I had multiple things to balance without losing integrity on any of those things. That's something that I've learned a ton about, where it's just trial and error. I can map it out during the months, and I've changed my in-person format quite a lot. Now I'm only working 3 nights a week. I do 12 hours a week of lessons pretty much, just so I can be a mom and do the online training. So it's changed a lot over the years, but it really is trial and error.
If your son wants to get into baseball, you're going to give him lessons how to, throw. I mean, because Allison Kime has currently got two kids, and she's doing she's showing them how to play. In fact, their kids are wearing her Rockford jerseys and things like that. But then they've started. I think one of them just started t-ball, and I asked her, "It's like, are you coaching them?" And like, no, I'm going to let the coach them up.
Yep.
I'm like, what are you talking about? You're the mom. You're super competitive. You're going to be wanting to be involved and tell them, hey, that's how you do it, because you're going to see all the mistakes. How are you going to handle that?
But that's the problem. That's probably why she wants to stay out of it. She's like, let's just give it to the coach, because I'm doing the same thing. My son's dad played baseball too for a long time, but he's like me. We're doing the same thing where, hey, let's just let you go to your coach. Let's see how this goes. Ideally, I'd like him to play any sport and just enjoy it. So that way, he can make it a lasting career if that's what he wants to do. So of course, during season though, because he's already played a couple like t-ball and farm seasons with baseball, he's gone on to have like a 20 strikeout record when he's up to bat. And I'm behind there, and people are probably thinking I'm going to be all angry, but I'm just laughing and smiling. I'm like, hey, let him just enjoy the game. If he ends up loving it, that's awesome. That could be, one of the greatest things. But if it's not his sport, then I'm going to have to pick the next one.
When you watch one of your, people that you gave lessons to, they pitch in a college game.
Oh yeah.
Do you go out of your way to watch it? Are you nervous when you watch it? What's your emotions when you watch one of them pitch there? Because obviously you have emotional ties here. You want them to do well. What's that like, watching them having no control how they're going to do?
I'm never nervous. Okay. I don't know if that's because when I was on the mound, I wasn't really nervous as an athlete, as I got more confident. So I don't worry about the nerves part, but it is very emotional. I'm wanting them to succeed. So of course, if I see them start to struggle, it hurts my heart a little bit. I'm like, come on, like you can do this, because I know they can. So it's more emotional than being like nervous or afraid of anything, but it's a surreal moment because it really brings me close back to that competitive time, that atmosphere of being a college athlete. And that's one of the things that I've really wanted to give back to the next generation and these kids. I want them, to reap all those benefits that I got by being a student athlete. So it's a proud moment. It's an exciting moment. Not nervous, just emotional.
Do you find yourself calling pitches like, oh, come on, throw that pitch? Or no, or no? What goes through?
Sometimes I do, but knowing them as like a high school pitcher is completely different as when they go to college. So there's things that they're developing. I remember Bree, she was going back low in the zone at times, and she's a phenomenal rise ball pitcher. So seeing her develop new things, I'm like, oh, that's awesome.
That's true.
Yeah.
I plugged you a lot when she pitched, by the way. I plugged you a lot. If you watched any of those, bro, I plugged you. I'm like, hey, her mentor was Toni Paisley, 1-3. So I gave you
some videos. I never see videos. I went back to ECU, and that's one of the things that I asked. I was like, do you have any videos? It would be really cool to see some of our games. And they told me that the hard drive basically caught on fire and there's like no videos. And I was like, oh, that's so sad.
All right, you and I will talk off air. We'll discuss more
Yeah.
on that. We'll talk more about that on there. I may have some info on that
Oh,
off the
that'd
air.
be
All
cool.
right. Two last things. Number one, when you think back of your career, you're a Hall of Famer now in ECU. Years from now, people go to the ECU campus. What do you want people to say about you? What's the legacy you want people to say about you 5, 10 years from now when they bring up Toni Paisley on the ECU campus or anywhere in softball?
I think the legacy, I've like really felt it this last weekend, because it's been 10 years since I had been there, and it takes 10 years to get inducted at ECU. So I think the legacy had started already a little bit, and I was reminded of it. And what I felt the most was, people would share with me the competitiveness, the work ethic, and like the grit. They felt when I went on the field, I was always going to just lay it all out and be a leader and just be aggressive. And it's just that competitive factor. So that's something that I find is important to have, not just on the field, but off the field. So if people can feel that when they think about me, I think that's really inspiring. And I hope that I can help more people be competitive with whatever you do in life.
All right, tell the audience they want to find out more information about Paisley's pitching. What's the best way to kind of contact you and find out more information about what you have to offer?
Yeah, I think Googling Paisley's Pitching, if you just type in Paisley's Pitching, that pops up a lot of stuff on the website, which is the easiest way to get in contact with me or just kind of find out what we're up to. All the social medias are the same, Paisley's Pitching. The only other thing is Toni Paisley, my name at Yahoo. That's very easy to remember, hopefully. So yeah, type in Paisley's Pitching, even paisleys.pitching.com. It's all right there.
And you obviously do lessons in California, but you also help
Yeah.
people outside of California, correct?
Yeah, that's where I created that whole fitness idea, but it was, with pitching. So basically on the online academy, you can train with me online and you get access to all my videos. You can follow full and live coaching bullpens. It's really, if you think of a gym online, but for softball players, which is really cool.
Actually, that is one more point because I do notice you post a lot of working out videos.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think that's by accident. That's a big part of being a pitcher. How much does that come up when you talk to your pitchers?
That's a huge part. I go all the way back to college, my junior year when I got All-American. That summer before going back to school was when I did the Shaun T Insanity workouts, and I did the most plyometrics I had ever done in my career. Again, not really understanding how it would impact the pitching motion. I just knew I was athletic and I wanted to get really strong and powerful. So feeling that experience, going through and seeing how much it changed my life as a pitcher, that's something I've really been dedicated to with the girls and the athletes. If you can move better, and you can, protect your body, you're going to be that much stronger and more powerful on the mound.
Well, that's incredible. And I encourage everybody to check that out. Hall of Famer, Toni Paisley, All-American, 3-time USA Pitcher of the Year, well-deserved honors. Thank you so much. I know it's so busy with everything you're going on, but this was so awesome. The UCF broadcaster, Eric, probably, I'll be honest, was mad at you at times, maybe a little upset. You kind of owned UCF. I remember you shut him out every game, it seemed like.
I told you I really liked playing against them.
You did, and you had a lot of success. But the softball fan here in me really enjoyed watching you play. And I think everybody that watched it was tremendous. And congratulations again on getting inducted to Hall of Fame. Well deserved, and everything you're doing and helping the game out and giving back to the game. This was a blast to do it, and we hope to do this again down the road.
Yeah, this was fun. Thank you for having me. This was awesome.